For our pie crust, you can definitely do this by hand. I use a food processor, and it's probably what I use my Cuisinart for the most at home is a pie crust. Because we are doing what is called pâte brisée. It is a French term for simply a pastry crust. We're going to do what is called cut in the butter. We're not creaming the butter in this case. If you're creaming the butter, you would be using a KitchenAid with a paddle attachment and actually beating the butter with the sugar. In this case, we're going to have all of our ingredients in the food processor first, and we're going to cut in cold butter at the end. Start with all of your dry ingredients. So here I have my flour, 2.5 cups. I have salt, which is very important. Don't forget it, a teaspoon of salt. I also have 1 teaspoon of sugar. Very, very small amount of sugar. You keep the sugar out. If you're going to use this crust for something like a quiche, typical pâte brisée does not have sugar in it. If your dough has sugar in it, it is called pâte sucrée. I kind of have something right in the middle here. Just adding that 1 teaspoon of sugar to this for our pie is what I like to do. You can keep it out. You could add a little more sugar. It's up to you. The method will be the same regardless of the sugar. I'm going to give this a quick spin and get these dry ingredients combined. Before you even get to this stage, make sure your butter, and I'm using 1 cup of butter. Make sure it's been diced into small chunks and make sure it's waiting in the refrigerator. It's really important to add cold butter into your dough. So I've done that ahead of time. I have not using room temperature butter. I'm not cutting my butter and then throwing it in. I dice my butter, have it waiting in the refrigerator, and I'm going to add it into my dry ingredients at this point in the game. Like I said, this is 1 cup of unsalted butter. A lot of people, certainly my grandmother, they like to use shortening in their pie dough. They claim that's the best for pies. You can certainly use whatever fat you like. Sometimes if I want to use shortening, I'll use half shortening and half butter. In this case, I've used all butter because I like the flavor of the butter. This is ice cold butter. You can even throw it in your freezer, absolutely fine. What we want to do here is make sure the butter remains in chunks in our pâte brisée. We want to see chunks in that butter. Those chunks of butter, when they hit the hot oven, start to steam, and that's what creates a flake in your pie crust. So if you want a nice flaky pie crust, make sure you have chunks of butter. And if you start with your butter cold, you're going to do a much better job of keeping it nice and chunky in your pie dough. And I am processing this. You can use the pulse on and off, or you can just let it spin, but pay attention and get in here and feel with your fingers, and you want something that resembles pea-sized bits of butter. So I'm just feeling around in here, and when it looks like little pea-sized bits, stop. And I'm there already. You can easily go overboard with your food processor, so make sure you practice with your food processor before you do a pie crust, just so you get to learn the power and you understand what's going on there. The last thing I need to add into this is ice cold water. Somewhere around 1/4 cup to 1/2 cup. I never really know, so I never really measure. All I'm going to do is eyeball it. Make sure your water is ice cold. You can have a little ice cube floating in it. It's fine. I'm just going to use it out of the tap. So I've measured out 1/2 cup. I don't think I'm going to use it all. Like I said, I'm just going to watch to see what's happening. My food processor is running. I'm pouring the water down the spout and the top. And as soon as it starts to form a bit of a mass, I'm going to get in here and feel once again what's going on. This isn't quite together yet, so I'm going to add a little bit more water. Just until it starts to form a mass. As soon as you see that happening, turn the food processor off and dump it out. As you can see here, I have a nice piece of stone to work on. I like to work on this when I'm working with doughs because it's a little cooler than any other surfaces in my kitchen. So I'm going to dump it right out onto my stone. And it should not be staying together at this point. If it's all in one mass when you dump it out of your processor, you've probably overworked it a bit. I'm actually going to use my hands and just sort of push it together here. So with my hands, pushing this together, I still see pieces of butter, which is excellent. Like I said, those little bits of butter that I see in my pâte brisée are going to give us the steam and also give us that flake in our crust. All I'm doing here is pushing it until it holds together. I'm going to wrap it up and I'm going to chill it for at least an hour. That chilling is allowing the butter to return to an ice-cold state, which is important, and it's also allowing the flour to relax a little bit. So when we go to roll it out, it doesn't just shrink back. We roll it out, it shrinks back again. If you allow that flour or the gluten in the flour to relax just a bit, you're going to have a much easier time rolling it out. I'm going to wrap this in some plastic wrap and chill it. So our dough has been chilling for about an hour and a half. If you don't know how long your dough has been in the refrigerator, it should feel solid and it should feel very, very cold before you even attempt to roll it. So these are ready to go. Remember, we're making a 9-inch pie, so I have this divided into 2 discs. One disc will be the bottom, one disc will be the top of our pie. I'm using this stone surface because it stays nice and cool. I'm going to dust it with a generous amount of flour and start working my dough out. You can use whatever type of rolling pin you're comfortable with. I happen to like this style. It's a French pin. It's up to you. First thing I do is just try to even out the disc a little bit. So I give it a few whaps before I even start rolling it. And then I'm going to start in the center, and I'm going to push out in all directions. I'm not rolling straight back and forth. I'm going to start in the center and push out. Start in the center and pull back, turn my dough, and do the same thing. This is going to help me keep a relatively even thickness on my dough. And as I'm rolling this out, I can clearly see those bits of butter that I was talking about that are so important for the flake in your pie crust. This is a really nice dough. If your dough tears, it's absolutely no problem. Put it back together. And to know when to stop, use your pie pan, your pie tin, and give it a measure. I need to go a little bit more to make sure I have enough dough to come up and over the sides. At this point in the game, my filling is ready, and make sure you have an oven preheating.